What's up? What's up? Welcome everybody. Welcome to the call. Got a few
Mark,
beautiful
it's better
people,
it.
beautiful faces popping up. What's up, Mark? Welcome to the call. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being here. We got Michael on. What's up, Michael? And Jorge, welcome to the call, my friend. Thanks for being here. We've
All
got people
right.
joining us on YouTube, on the YouTube Live as well. We've got some exciting stuff for you today. So I'm excited to dive in and let's talk about some of the things that are some of the things that are going to be helpful as we go about our real estate investing journey here. Now, the purpose of this call is we want to add value. For those of you who are just starting your real estate investing journey, a lot of you are getting educated, and through that process, it's nice to have some live interaction with local people, local investors like Maeli and myself that are out doing it. And we want to share a little bit of value with you today. We're going to talk about how to go out and make offers on real estate. So, we talk a lot about our deal spotter system, generating the property leads, running the numbers, let the numbers tell the story, right? The numbers will tell us if it's a deal or not. If it is, then the third step is we make an offer. So, Maeli being the real estate agent in our group, she's usually the one making offers, so she's going to kind of take the reins tonight. Before we do that, though, I do want to make a quick announcement. For those of you who are local in the northern Utah area, Maeli and I are having a live event tomorrow night specifically aimed at new real estate investors where we're going to be sharing some awesome strategies and some awesome opportunities for you to get started down the path of going out and investing in real estate. So it's about a 2-hour meeting tomorrow night in Murray. Starts at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure you mark your calendars and you're there. Looks like
So, hold on. There's more. There's more. There's always more. We're doing a really fun special thing just for our local people. We're doing hot chocolate, coffee, and donuts at 6:30. So show up at 6:30 before the meeting, right? So about 30 minutes before. And that way we can mix and mingle and socialize with like-minded people, right? That are doing deals in the same area that you are. Very important. So that will be a really big deal. Even if you have been a part of our community for a while and you're like, oh yeah, well, I've already seen, Mitch's amazingness and how he presents what we do and velocity banking. Sometimes though, this is key. Even if you've seen velocity banking, even if you've heard, the strategies that we talk about on our first exposure on our Thursday night meetings, it's real estate church, people. If you want to get remotivated and feel like I'm getting a ton of messages on Instagram and Facebook and private messages saying, oh, I feel so lost and I just don't have the energy and I don't have the drive and I'm not hungry and I'm feeling kind of just lackadaisical, if you will. This is why we do real estate church. And that's
come charge your
my
batteries.
people, but you have to recharge your batteries. Like, it's so important. So come hang out with us, even if it's just for those 30 minutes. Obviously, you can stay and hang out. That way, at the end, you can socialize as well. But those are really important. And you guys can go into the lobby after the 30 minutes is up and still hang out and socialize. That's totally fine. There's a big foyer area that you guys can socialize. So feel free to come and hang out. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Be there or be square. All right.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's dive into the content for tonight. Like I said, Maeli's going to be kind of taking the reins. There are several components to making offers, and we're going to talk about properties. We're going to kind of start the process tonight on making an offer on a real property that we've identified. So Maeli's going to share those details on the property with you, and then we're going to take you through how to fill out the state-approved REPSI. We live in Utah, so for those of you joining us from other states, you're going to get an opportunity to see kind of how we fill out a Utah REPSI, but the process is very similar no matter what state you live in. So let's go ahead and do that. Maeli, take it away.
Yeah. Also, just as a little announcement, Mitch and I have been invited up to a really fun retreat for leaders within our real estate organization. And so we won't be having a call next week.
Yes.
So
Yes, no
sad.
call next week. Every
Yeah,
other
no,
Wednesday, though, just not next week.
that's right. So next week we probably will be like a Facebook Live or like an Instagram Live while we're there because it's going to be an epic retreat that we're going to with a bunch of like-minded investors. So we're really excited. and it's an incredible opportunity. We'll be able to come back and share some amazing information. And then so that, see, Jared Brenchley is actually going to be coming back on that following week, right? The 30th. Yep. So the 30th of August. So right when we come back, he'll be jumping on and going over wholesaling. So I know that we kind of covered wholesaling last week, but this guy, so he, he's on our team, and we've been working with him for a while, but he took what we learned and all the information that we do, and he like 10 times this. So even though I feel like I'm pretty good at wholesaling and Mitch is, this kid like for real took what we knew and like ran. And that's, I hope that, showcases that you guys can do whatever you want and really level up your business in any direction you want. So anyway, he'll be a fantastic person to have on to teach us, because his systems are dialed in and on point. He's done, I don't know, I want to say it's probably over 100 wholesale deals now. So it's a lot. He's crushing. Okay, we are going to dive right in. Do I have a shared screen scenario?
Yep, you're all set.
I'm all ready to go. Okay, first things first, I'm going to show you the property in which we're going to be making an offer on. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see you.
Okay, so this is the property in which I have identified that I'm going to be making an offer on tonight. And it's like, okay, well, what's so special about this house? It doesn't seem all that great, right? It's like, it's kind of boring. So a couple things. One, let's look at days on market. So it's been on the market for 72 days. And yes, my rule of thumb is 90 days is when we start the seller finance scenario. But in this case scenario, I've actually already talked to the gentleman once. Now, that doesn't mean a lot because he didn't say yes. I haven't submitted an offer yet. Any of those things. He wanted to wait a little while, and this was about 15 days ago. And so last time we talked about, and actually in my women's group, we were talking about when is it right to follow up? When is it right for that consistency of communication? And the key is really bug them until they say yes. Right? I just keep bugging them because fortune's the follow-up, as Mitch always says, fortune's the follow-up. So until somebody says stop bugging me or stop calling me or stop, then I will follow up. I've been texting this guy, and finally he said like 2 days ago, he's like, all right, I would love to see a letter of intent. And I was like, okay, well, I could send you a letter of intent, and originally that's what I was going to do, was so a letter of intent is essentially all the numbers. It's broken down. It shows them what we'd be willing to do. It kind of gives them an idea of what, how the process would work, because this is going to be a seller finance deal. The offer is. I'm not looking to fix and flip this property. It could be a great fix and flip, potentially. Actually, no, not for the price that he hasn't listed. So anyway, it's a whole other story. Okay, so this is the property. Let me just show it to you so you kind of know where we're at. It was turned into a commercial zoning property. It was only ever used, this four-year living, family area. Right when you walked in, this space here was only ever used. And then the upstairs was never really used because it was a business. So this kitchen was really never used. Every once in a while, he'd go on the back porch, he said, and hang out. But it's a really nice, because they took really good care of the property. It was a commercial use property. And it's big. I actually think I could subdivide this lot. That's a whole nother, scenario that we could think through. I do think we could actually subdivide this. It's ugly only because of carpet. It's actually freshly painted. And then the bathroom's, pretty outdated. But if I'm turning this into a seller finance deal, do I care that the bathrooms are outdated? Not really, right? And do I care that the kitchen's, it's not terrible, right? It's not. Fantastic condition of the flooring. It's got granite countertops. It's a perfect rental, as is, just by itself. I don't actually have to do anything. The furnace is brand new. The water heater is brand new. The roof is like 2 years old. So all the things that we look for on a traditional rental, this has screaming seller finance, please come pick me up. It is, right? This is like a dream come true for someone. And so here we go. We're going to talk about it. It is on a main road. So once again, not a great fix and flip. It's just not. It's on Gentile Street right here in Layton, Utah, literally just down the street from us. So I know the area really well. It is only a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. So, and really it's more like a 3-bedroom when I looked at it. You could make it a 4, but really it's kind of a 3, 2. And I would let him know that when I'm making the offer, obviously. So it tells you, all the stuff that's new. It tells you, that everything's in really good condition, and it is. Like, this is a kind of a rare find in the sense of how well they managed and took care of this property. Again, because it was a business, they had to look really nice, and they just took care of it. They didn't update anything, but that's kind of here nor there. All right, so a couple things we need to know if we're going to make up an offer. Right here at the bottom, it's going to say owner, okay? And usually whoever that says property, the owner is Ray DeBrucio. That's not the case. Here, actually, let me pull up his contact info. So 10 seconds, because I'm actually going to send him a text as well. So, Gentile. That's how I have to save people's contacts. That's how I can remember them. Like, I make too many offers. I put like their address in with their information. That's funny. Okay, so we are going to meet up, or we're going to write the offer to, well, actually, let's just go to the tax data. That'll be the best thing to do. So let me scroll down here. Where did it go? No, so that's 1650. I'm going to do a new tab. So this is super helpful if you're a real estate agent, or if you are not a real estate agent, it's super helpful because if you, I didn't need to make so many new tabs. Let's get rid of that guy. If you're like, ooh, I need to find such and such, go to tax data. So if you go to, your county records, and that's where I'm about to go, that's where you're going to figure out who owns the property, who are you making the, who are you writing the offer out to. So that's something that you absolutely have to know, is like, they can't accept the offer if you write it to that Roy guy that was on there claimed as the owner, and then unfortunately it wasn't the owner, right? I thought it was going down there, but obviously I was wrong. Let's see here. Anybody see a Gentile Street? Did I miss it? Gentile. And it's not alphabetical. A little bit, not really. Let's see. Let's go over the top. Sorry, let's take a second. I had it up and then I closed it for some reason. MLS likes to do that. Where is Gentile? Gentile. Sometimes it takes a second to find them, but you'll find them. Oh, you know what it is? I'm a goofball. So house number, yes, but I did not identify which county it is. Okay, there it is. I knew it was in the bottom. Okay, so you go here and you do need to know the parcel number. So we're gonna write down the parcel number. So follow along. I would be filling out your own Rep C. If you don't know where to find a Rep C, I'm gonna show you real quick just to see. When I first got started, I wasn't a real estate agent, as most of you know. I just started as a real estate investor. And so Utah 2023 Rep C. Boom, there you go. You can literally find it just that fast. So I would go here, right? And you can fill this in just like this, okay? See? Okay? So you can actually fill in, now they have it set up. If you click on that specific one, you can just fill it out online. So everyone, pause this video, take a second, right? And go to Utah. Just type in Google or wherever and just do 2023 Utah Rep C. And then bam, this is the first one that showed up, right? Okay, we're gonna go back to this. So I need to write down the parcel number. That's something you have to have on the, it's not a deal breaker. Like if you don't have it on there, it's not like they're going to turn it down. You can always add it later, but then you have to do more addendums, and that's always, less addendums, the better. Actually, Jared Brenchley and I have used to have a funny competition of how many Rep Cs or addendums we've had to do. I think he beat me. I think he ended up at like 42 addendums once. Oh, can you imagine having to do 42 addendums? Worst contract ever. Worst deal ever. I've actually had to do like 26, and that was also really horrible. That was, oh, what a nightmare. But obviously, you want to get the deal done. Okay, so there's your parcel number, and then it's also going to tell us who owns this property. And let's see here. This is terrible. I don't write my contracts anywhere. Okay, so it is Ray. So seller number 1 is Ray J. DeBrizio. So go through Ray J. So, okay, perfect. And then it will tell you if there's somebody else on title, and it looks like it's a Michael L. Frigio. In this case, who do you write it to? I would say refer back to the MLS and kind of what they have set up on the owner. Sometimes they'll actually tell you who to, showing and submit all offers online. Contact Ray. So I'm going to write it to just Ray. I don't know. It's showing that he might be on title, but I also don't 100% know that he's on title. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not, it says there's 2 buyers. Deed, arm's length transaction. I'm actually going to put both. I'm going to put both on there. So we're going to put Ray and Michael. But if for any reason, and this is why addendums live, right? So if for some reason it's not like, you know, Michael doesn't actually exist and he's not, or somehow he got bought out, it's just not showing because county records are slow, right? That he's actually not on title, but maybe it was just reported that, you know, he was one of the buyers, then fine, I can do an addendum and remove Michael. But for sure we know Ray, right? We already know that. So I might as well add both. And I do remember him saying something about a partnership. So I'm going to write it to both just to, you know, make this yeah, we're going to do both. So this is the Utah BREFC. Now I'm doing it inside of my back office. So if you're a real estate agent, right, you're actually doing, they merged, MLS merged with SkySlope. And so now all your forms actually live in your back office, which is kind of slick, I'm not going to lie. And so you can do everything digitally here. Now, back to this form. Can you put in Ray's number, you know, information here? Yes. Can it be frustrating a little bit because font? I don't know how to change the font either on this. I know that there's a way. I can't remember how.
Print it out and do it with a pen.
Exactly. And honestly, so something that we, there's a challenge in, which class is it? Deal of the Decade? Is that class that we made? You have to do a contract every single day for 30 days?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. So Deal of the Decade is such a great course. If you haven't gone through that yet, I highly recommend jumping to that as fast as you can and getting to that spot. It forces you to get really uncomfortable. And I love how, like, this was really hard for me when I first did this because handwriting, because I didn't have anything digital, you know, 6 years ago. So I literally printed out 30 contracts and they were different. So they weren't as long. They're a little longer now, 2 pages longer. But, you know, and I would handwrite and my hands would cramp and I'd just be like, ah! It was so much. But I did it anyway, and you should too. Because out of those 30 offers I made, I did get one. And that might be the case for you, right? You might have to write 100 offers before you get one. But it took you 20 minutes to write an offer. So yeah, it's worth, obviously, if the deal's worth your time and money, I would do that. Okay, so we're going to say Ray and Michael. Okay, yes, perfect. And then how much earnest money? Because it's a seller finance deal, and I kind of talked to this guy, I'm going to do $2,000. Can you do whatever you want? Yes. I hate, actually, I don't hate earnest money. Mitch hates earnest money. So if you want to talk about why you hate earnest money, go for it. I'm just going to keep filling out information.
Yeah, I mean, earnest money, the intention is in the name, right? Earnest meaning we're showing, we're showing our intent to buy the property. However, we're going to go over this as we kind of get through the contract. This contract allows us to back out for a number of reasons, most of which we get our earnest money back, right? So that deposit, if we're putting thousands and thousands of dollars, that starts to eat up our capital. That when it comes to closing on a property, some of your capital spread out if you're out making a lot of offers, which you should be. You should be out making a lot of offers because you're probably not going to close on most of them, right? And when I say most of them, you may close on 40% of them, right? But the reason we make an offer is to tie up the property, to take it off the market, to make it so that so that they can only sell it to us once they accept the offer. But then we get a period of due diligence where we get to go in and do our inspections. Once we do those inspections, we may realize that there's more to do on this property than we want to deal with, and we back out. So I don't love earnest money because while it does show that you are earnest about purchasing the property, there's a lot of ways to back out, and really it's just tying up capital that doesn't need to be tied up anyway, my opinion. But
Yeah.
that's the opinion of this real estate investor. I will say that.
I mean, it has, when you're on the other side though, and we are the investor that's selling the property, then obviously things change because once again, we know that if somebody's willing to put, say, $20,000 down as an earnest money, a rule of thumb would be maybe 10%, I think, or excuse me, 1%. Well, that would have been way too much. 1%. I think that's fair, and it's healthy to say, hey, this is how much I love the property. But maybe they don't have a lot of money. So definitely in 2020, I mean, you had to throw a ton of earnest money, and sometimes it was non-refundable earnest money, and it was nuts, right? But we're not there. We can do a lot smaller earnest money and get it accepted. I think 2,000 is actually a very, in this offer, I think it's strong, actually. I don't think that it will hurt us in any way, but I'm not going to do more than 2,000. So if for some reason that's an issue for them, I'll ask them why. Why would that be an issue? Because usually it's because they're uneducated, and this guy listed his own house. Now, let me back up a little bit. So his home, this is a new company that just kind of popped up. I actually don't even know how to describe this company other than worthless. Like, it's kind of like a homie, but even worse because he's doing all of his own marketing. He's doing all of his own advertising, which is just a big sign in front of the yard. And it allowed him to list his home on the MLS, which is the whole purpose. Kind of bizarre, which is why it says, submit all offers online to this, whatever that is. And, and then it gives his personal cell phone number. Wow. Okay. That's a little crazy. Now, does that make a perfect seller finance opportunity? Yes, because I can actually talk directly to the homeowner, right? This is fantastic. And you don't find that obviously all that often, but this is a new company. I will find the actual company that is representing this because it is interesting. I like the guy a lot, by the way. This guy, he's super cool. He's owned lots of businesses. He's super savvy. So he right out the, kind of understood what I was talking about when I was like, hey, are you open to seller, creative financing? He was like, sure, let's talk. So really like the guy. Don't find that obviously all the often, but it takes phone calls, right? It took me searching the MLS for hours and or my assistant, I should say, but nevertheless. Okay, back to the good stuff. So we're going to continue this. Now, I was looking for what was included. So the refrigerator is included. I didn't see a microwave that was included. Washer and dryer wasn't included. So what I'm just going to put, and it's always just on there, that I have it just saved, which is as per listing. So that way you're not like asking for something that he's not wanting to give out, but then also you're not like missing out on other things that he included. That's a quick way to just be like, yeah. And then excluded items, we'll just leave that. Buyer separate bill, blah, blah, are not. Okay, water services. So pretty simple. This is just as per the deed. So this is something that's kind of new. So they want you to really talk about water shares. And there was this huge lawsuit that, they got into. And so water shares, again, I just put as per deed, just so that there's no question, whatever the title, right, or whatever the deed, we're a deed state, whatever it says, that's what you put on there. So that's what I put. Purchase price. Okay, so now let's go back and talk about where they're at. Let's look at the history of this deal. So originally they listed it at $649. Okay. Now they've dropped it quite some, right? Now let's actually go to one more scenario just to kind of go, okay, what should we be offering? So I pulled up already a comp. And so these are the comps that I found. And it's hard. I mean, I didn't see anything that was super spectacular. This is the closest one to his purchase price.
That's not even sold. That's active.
Right. And it's been active for a second. And it's the closest one that's kind of like his.
Can anybody guess? And I want your participation here, so come off mute. Why do we prefer sold comps over active comps? Sold comparables versus active comparables. Why do we focus on the sold ones? And
Is it because
sold ones can't be negotiated down?
I heard two people talking at once. I see Jorge's off of mute. What were you gonna say, Jorge?
I'm just saying because sold is an accurate representation of what the accurate numbers are that are actually selling. People can always overprice stuff and stuff like that. So
yeah, right. I can if my house if three houses in my neighborhood sold for 500,000, but I have some kind of hubris and my house is exactly the same as those ones that sold, I can get on and list it for $1 million if I want to. Like they're not going to stop me from doing that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to sell for, right? And so, so when we look at the actual sold comps, we're seeing what the market is actually doing, and it compensates for the hubris of the property owner.
Yeah. Perfect. No,
thank you,
great
Jorge.
answer.
That's awesome.
And so
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, Mark.
Do banks or financiers, do they have a preference? Do they want to see full comps?
Yes. So you're a appraiser. Now, luckily, so keep in mind, this is what we're going to be talking about. I'm not going through traditional financing. I'm not going to be getting a loan on this property, right? And so this activity is kind of void for that reason, in the sense of but we also aren't going to overpay, even though we're not going through financial institutions for this property, because he already has a loan on this home, right? He already has a mortgage on this home. We don't need to go get a mortgage because he's willing to sell or finance it to us. So in that case, it's right. So it doesn't necessarily matter. But to your point, if this was a traditional offer and I was looking to do a fix and flip or the burst strategy with this, I absolutely would want to make sure I'd have comps to support that, because, but also, I mean, part of me goes, okay, I'm going to offer this guy, let's say, is this the highest sold comp is 485. Now, it is a lot smaller square footage by almost 5,000 square feet. It does have an extra bedroom than, so that's kind of, so maybe 485, I know that he's thinking because he has a business license and it is zone commercial, it's worth more. I would probably say, depending on the market, I don't necessarily think it's going to be worth more. And I don't know that the appraiser would think that it's worth more. But let's pretend that the appraiser did think that it was worth more. My gut tells me the most I'm going to offer on this property would be $515, $520. Now, why would I be willing to give him more than what this is right here? Well, I'm going to be willing to say you are still super far off from the 649 that you're, I think that's what he has it listed for right now, or 559. So, if I gave him 515 and he started at 449, that's a huge haircut. But I can show him comps and I can be like, okay, but I don't know who helped you list this. I don't know where you got these numbers from, right? I have no idea where you got this from. Can you show me that having a business, having a zone for business increases the value of the home? If he can show me that somehow, I'd be willing to look at that. Honestly, I would be. But if he can't show me that, it's a way for him to kind of eat the sword, right? It's a way for him to be like, ooh, ouch. Okay, I can see how that's not a thing. So then I'd be like, all right, so I'm going to still give you more than what your home is essentially worth because you're willing to carry the note for us, right? And we don't have to go through the traditional seller financing or traditional financing. But in this scenario, I would say that sometimes if, let's say you offered 515 and this was a fix and flip deal, and they keep their appraiser, to your question mark, the appraiser came back and said, yeah, except for we think it's worth 458. What if he came all the way back down to this, or dropped it to the 485 because that's the only sold comp, right? The highest sold comp. Actually, we think that it's only worth 485. Then at that time, two things get to happen. One, you as the buyer get to decide that you're not willing to pay any more than the 485. But also, the seller is able to say, nope, sorry, I want this price or nothing, and we're out of contract. So that can happen, but this is a great negotiating tool. Let the appraiser tell you what the home is worth. I do like that it keeps everyone pretty honest when it comes to the bank side. Hopefully that helps with your question. All right, so I'm gonna offer, my brain. So I'm gonna offer, he wants 569. I'm going to offer him 515. What do you think, babe? 515, is that okay?
I think on seller finance, yeah, 515 is fine.
Yeah.
Not 5 million.
Not 5 million. I'm using the number. Sorry, people.
No commas.
Yeah.
Only one comma, not two.
Only one comma, yeah. Okay. That's earnest money. That's wrong anyway. Okay, so we're going to do $2,000 earnest money. Additional earnest money, no. New loan. We're just going to kind of leave that blank as well. So if there's nothing there, I just put NA. And then same thing here. Oops. And then seller financing, right? This is what we need to figure out. So let's go to my drive and go to seller financing. Yay, we got to figure out some seller financing stuff. Let's figure out, not this guy. I already ran numbers on him. Go away. It worked, by the way. It was a good deal. If anybody was curious. Okay, so we're gonna run numbers. This is our special calculator, and this calculator allows us to figure out what we actually can offer, what we need as interest rate, what we need as a down payment, all the fun things. Okay, so we're gonna say 515, right? That was what we said. Is that right? Need glasses, obviously. And then on 515, what is 10%?
51,500.
It is, okay. I'm just gonna do 51. Okay. Then I think a safe number is 5%, but let's find out, because I also need to make sure that we're going to what? We don't buy one property, we don't pass this threshold of making an offer if we can't do what? Shout it out. Any people come off or put it in chat, whatever it might be. Ooh, we got some, this way, very short notice. Okay. We got some, yes, anybody? Put it in the chat. What are we looking for here? What do we need in order for this to be a deal? Put it in YouTube chat. Wherever you're at, put it somewhere. Yell it to me.
What was the question again? What was the question?
So in order for this to be a deal, right? What do I need? I need what to say yes to this property? I need to make sure that it's going to
cash flow.
Yeah.
Boom.
Ding, 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 ding. You get a book. All right. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Denise, we can talk about that as far as the tools. Yes, that's something that you will need if you're going to be making seller finance offers. So definitely let's chit chat about that. Mitch, if you want to chit chat that, we can, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, so 30 years, we can change that, right? So there's multiple levers here that we can change. So we can change that. This is a seller finance deal, so write these down. You can change hey, Miss Coach Rhodes, you're online. Why don't you tell us your fun acronym that you came up with again so everyone hears it? This is perfect. I love it.
It helps to negotiate. It's just be paid.
Yeah.
So I actually just used that and signed a purchase agreement yesterday or today, this morning.
I love it.
Gosh.
That's
I wanna
awesome.
hear more about
Congratulations.
that. Congrats. So the first one then, if it's be paid, it's balloon. The next one is purchase price. I'm just writing this down because I forgot already what you told me before, so I'm writing it down too. See, we're always students, people. We're always students. And Charlotte is a peer, right? So she is one of these people confidant that I trust. Okay, and then interest rate. Oh wait, amortization. Excuse me.
Yep.
And then interest. And then D is down payment. Okay, so those are the levers you can push. Okay, so you can negotiate balloon. What's the balloon? What is that? So this is here. So this is when the balloon, how many months or years you're going to be holding onto this property. I know that in this case, I talked to the gentleman and he was like, well, how long are you thinking? You know, like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, okay, so this is a business for you. You're going to have to 1031 this property, whatever you make on this property, because it's not his primary residence. And you're going to have to, you know, buy something bigger than this home. What is your plan? What are you trying to buy? What's your goal here? And he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about getting into a rental, but I don't really want to be a landlord right now, and blah, 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 right? Story. We're here to solve problems. So immediately I go, perfect. Do you want to do, what's your loan like right now? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, how many years left do you have on this loan? And he goes, oh, I don't know, but I wouldn't want to do it that long. I would want it to be like quick, pretty quick, but not too quick if you're talking about deferring my taxes. And I said, yes, I'm talking about deferring your taxes. So we landed on 60 months. 60 months is 5 years. That's a pretty standard turnaround time for us because it gives us time to find a credit partner if we want to refinance. It gives us time to establish the business that we're going to be running out of this property, which is either a traditional long-term rental, or in this case, I will be turning this into a host home for disabled young adults. So there you go. We'll be talking about that too. And then the next one would be to, you know, negotiate just time. So anyway, so there's your balloon. That's what that is. Purchase price. We already talked about that. Amortization schedule. So this is your term. So amortization schedule, I can't say that word, is that I have put 30 years, but we can change that. We can play with that number to get us what we need for cash flow, right, for the payment.
A lot of people think they're kind of stuck on that 30-year idea, but that's just an arbitrary number that the bank uses, right? When we're seller financing, we can, to get our payment where we need it to be. Notice when Maeli changed that from 30 to 40, it dropped the payment $200, right? Because it's amortizing over 40 years instead of 30. So don't get stuck in the thinking that we have to do 15 years or we have to do 30 years because that's what the bank does. We can do 41 and a half years if we want to. Like we could do any amount of time you want to amortize that over. And that can help you. That's one of those levers you can pull that can help you get the payment where it needs to be in order to make sure that this property cash flows. So all that's doing is simply dividing the purchase price, or the loan amount rather. It's dividing that by the number of years that you are that you are amortizing over, right? And obviously factoring in interest as well.
Yep. Okay. So we figured out the purchase price. We know what the down payment is. Now, can I change the down payment and would that adjust everything? Yeah. So let's play with the down payment just so that if anyone's watching, they're like, whoa, how does that work? Well, let's say you wanted to do, I don't know. Let's say you said, oh, well, I have $100,000 I can put down. Okay, but $100,000, I don't, oh, 10,000. So only do 10,000, that'd even be better. Let's say you wanted to put $100,000 down. I don't think that's a good necessarily use of that money, but it doesn't change the fact that you totally could and maybe that's what he needs to make this deal. I would rather pick up 4 more properties, right? That would be, or 2 more, or 1 more at least property. But it did change the payment. And so if that's what we're looking for is cash flow, we might actually need to come up with a bigger down payment to make it, right? But in this case, I actually think we can cash flow with the amount we talked about, which is the 51,000. Okay, we're gonna keep it at 5% interest on our side, but let's look at what it does if we changed it to 4%. That changes everything too, right? So it's like, ooh, that really changed it. And so I would rather negotiate interest rate to get me at the price point that I need or to the payment that I need per month than negotiate a bigger down payment, obviously, right? As an investor, that's what we're going to try for first. But there you go. Okay, so let's see here. Anything else we want to add? I don't know the current balance on the home, right? I can kind of assume based on, we get logged out? No, we'll take it. Tax data. Get rid of all my. So we can kind of assume what he owes. Let's see, land use. Your bills. You do need to know these things, like what you're central heating, what's the square footage. So these are all very helpful, but arm's length, recorder's office. Okay, so he took out a loan for $168,000. Is everybody seeing that? Okay, so we know that when was this? April. So in 2008, when the market was the lowest, right? He bought this for only $168,000. I don't know if he has refinanced out. I don't know anything. But also,
Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee, or the Carolinas, they don't.
You kind of muffled. Say that again.
I don't think that was intentional.
Oh.
But Jorge, do you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Oh.
Okay. So I don't know. The answer is I have no idea what he, unfortunately, on this house. Sometimes it's pretty like obvious, right? Because it's like a trail, but this is kind of like, oh, I don't know. It was a long time ago. And county records back then did not do a good job of updating stuff. So I would say that in this case, it's fair to say that I obviously don't know, but he is going to be making good money on us. I can do only, I'm gonna do 5%, and that's just because that's what we talked about. But maybe, because he did say, oh.
You have to put the percent sign on it.
Oh. Good to know. There you go, everybody. Put the percent sign. So I did tell him that we have to run our numbers, right? And if I can't cash flow at 5%, then it's not a deal for us. And that's part of the negotiation process. So we can figure that out. I'm liking this number. I know. So, okay, let's do this too, because this is something that we'll need to do. So Zillow, oops. Cannot type. Wow, it knows me so well. Okay, let's do the address. So 1650 West. Yes. So real quick, I'm just gonna see what Zillow. Now this isn't perfect. This is just like, really broad stroke here. But I'm gonna see what they think the rent. They think it's worth $555. First off, that's interesting. And then let's see what they think monthly estimate would be. Yeah. So this would be if I got a traditional mortgage. Obviously that won't work, right? Definitely can't cash flow on that, which is why here in Utah, that's a no-go. Rents are about $1,100 deficit. So for a traditional financing. Okay. So we're going to look for seller finance deals to make this worth our time. All right, so it looks to me, this is again, broad stroke. I'm not going to say, yes, for sure, I know I can get $2,500 a month for this property on a long-term hold. But I do know that that's actually pretty accurate from what I was looking at with my property management company. So we're going to get rid of that. Going to come back over. So $2,200. So how you figure out cash flow, we're going to just go real quick. Now, this is not my strategy, and I'm going to tell you my strategy, but if I was going, you want multiple exits. So worst case scenario, this is a long-term play, a long-term hold, and they said that the roughly rent is $25.14. Then I'm going to minus what the actual payment is here, which is $22.37. Okay, so I'm only, and this is if I'm managing it, this isn't even if I have a property management company or anything, I'm cash flowing $277. So normally this would not necessarily be a deal for me, right? And so probably to create the accurate, scenario here so that we have multiple exit strategies of the what if it goes down. And I'll show him this, right? This is the best part about what we do. If I show him, hey, I'm not going to cash flow on this, I'm going to need 4%. I'm going to need that to make my numbers work, because otherwise we're in the negative. So 25.14 minus now 19.39. Now we're at cash flow 575 minus $100 for property management. Okay, I think we could at least stay afloat if we had to long term this, right? And our number is $400 a month. If we can cash flow $400 a month, we'll say yes to this. And that's because of the ideal acronym, and that's very helpful.
So Maeli, I want to throw something. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Did you guys already offer them more than what they were asking? I mean, was that already discussed?
It kind of was, in the sense that he's like, well, if I would do this, it would have to be worth my time. I'm like, well, what would be worth your time? And I let him talk for a
How
while.
long has it been on the market?
So it's only, oh yeah, you missed that part.
About 75 days.
Like 70 some days. It's not terribly long, to be honest, right?
But he's overpriced. It's going to stay there forever.
He is. I don't know why that disappeared. But yeah, he is overpriced. And so there's no way he'd be able to, nobody's going to, if he can prove to me, like I said, that, somehow it being a commercial property, zone commercial, that, he can justify why he's wanting $60,000 more than $70,000 more than what it's actually worth, then I would entertain it. But in this case, I don't see why it'd be worth $70,000 more. So I am going to offer him a lot less than what he wants, because he's obviously wanting $559 or $569. I'm going to offer him $515, which is still $20,000 more than I actually think it's worth.
So on the commercial zoned, a lot. I don't know where you guys get your housing insurance, but like for residential type of insurance, they will not insure it if it's being used as commercial. Right. So, and with the zoning, the one that I'm buying now too has a portion of it that's commercial. So it's being used as a rental, as like a housing rental, but it's just something that I found that my insurance company said they would not cover it if it was being used commercial.
Good to look at. And those are things that we would have to find out during due diligence, right? You can't buy a property without insurance. And that would be really bad to get to the signing table and be like, oh no, I can't afford the commercial insurance, because it's a lot more expensive to have commercial insurance versus residential. So that is a fantastic tip. If you guys are listening, write that down. Like that is, something that, and I'm writing it down too, just so that for sure I don't forget to do that, because that is something that I didn't used to do, but I learned the hard way, was also making sure that you are in insurance. Let me back up. That you're buying a house that's not in a floodplain. If you're buying a house in a floodplain area, your insurance is almost double. Like, it's crazy how much more expensive it is. And it will make it to where somebody can't actually, on the back end, buy your property because the payment's too high for them. Because they're looking at the DTI, right? The debt to income ratio. And so when you buy it cash, this is why I learned the hard way, we did, is because we bought it cash. We didn't need that type of insurance. Like, the mortgage company didn't require us, because we didn't buy it with a mortgage. We bought it with cash. So we didn't know it was in a floodplain. Like, how? So anyway, now I'm
that was Harrisville, Charlotte. You were in on that one.
Yeah, we didn't know, right? And it was like, oh, how did I not know, right? Luckily,
obviously, it all worked out.
Oh yeah, we all made bank on that Friday. It was fantastic, but it was willing and dealing, and like it was back and forth. It was quite the drama on my side as an agent. Like, oh no. So anyway,
But also, one of the things that impacted this one too for me was that the taxes are going, when they register through title, even if you're going through escrow, they're registering through title on a owner finance, the taxes are going to increase significantly from what is listed as he's paying. So that has to be considered into your cash flow.
so we wouldn't be taking this over traditionally, like Mitch, we talked about doing so like it stays in place. What's that called? My brain just.
What stays in place?
So it would be recorded, but like taxes wouldn't change.
Is it subject to?
Well, it is subject to, but I'm trying to think of the specific name.
Are you talking about the uniform real estate contract?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's it. So write that down too. If you do here in Utah, a uniform state contract.
It's only called that in Utah. In every other state, it's called contract for deed. So for those of you who are outside of Utah, so that'd be Jorge and Charlotte, and if there's any others, it's called a contract for deed. In all other 49 states except Utah, it's called a uniform real estate contract.
Yeah, and so if you do that, something that we kind of like discovered with one of our other students now here, Dane Clark, he really was going through this with us, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's genius. Actually, why don't you break that down a little bit? I'll keep filling out why that's so genius. Like if you do that instead of a traditional seller finance deal on this property.
Yeah. So, well, hold on. I want to make a point before you move too far on. So,
okay.
So let's come back to this. But yeah, uniform. So the main difference is a uniform real estate contract keeps the title in the name of the previous owner, right? So we have a notice of interest on the property, which means he can't sell it out from under us and do something shady. But and a contract in place that says that the property's ours and we're buying it from him over time. Whereas in a subject to, if we were to use like an all-inclusive trust deed as an example, or a warranty deed, or a quitclaim deed, then the title would be moved into our name. Normally, we would like that to happen, right? We want to have control of the property. We want to have control of the deed. However, there are certain circumstances where strategically it makes more sense to keep that title in the previous owner's name, and in this case, that's where we're going with it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be that case, but so it depends on how we land on the negotiation here, and what I hear from the county as far as taxes, if they are going to go up, right, from what he's paying now, or what the insurance is going to be. Because if we have to have business insurance, even though it's not going to be used as, I mean, it will be a business, but not the way that he's been using it, right? I want to see what that looks like. So definitely part of my due diligence once we're under contract. But I'm going to go through all that work, honestly, until we're under contract. Because what do I know? Even if I don't want this property and I put this under contract, is somebody else going to want this property as a seller finance deal with only $51,000 down?
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. And
Wholesale.
I know our number is $400, but a lot of people will buy, I mean, I know a lot of people who will buy a property as long as they break even every single month because of, the ideal acronym. So because they're getting deductions,
Appreciation, equity.
Appreciation, they're getting appreciation, right? They're getting a tax deduction that they don't actually have outside of a rental. So that is worth it to them. It's great, don't get me wrong. We love, all of that, but we need to obviously pay our bills.
Yeah, Maeli and I like cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, cash flow is king. So, that's our rule. Doesn't have to be yours. We teach all of our peoples to make that happen. So
Maeli, I want to come back to a point you were making earlier when you were adjusting the interest rate, right? You said, well, we've been talking about 5, but I'd like to negotiate him down to 4. What if he stays at 5? What's one of the other levers we can pull to get that payment down under $2,000? So if you would adjust that back to 5%.
Okay.
So he's like, no, I need 5%. Okay, keep your 5%. How do we adjust that back? If you hit enter, it'll adjust that payment back up. We can adjust the amortization, right? We can adjust the term of the loan. And if we keep kind of playing with it, so go to like 52 years, let's see what that does.
It would have to be like 60. I think to hit the same number.
There you go.
Still
Yeah, so go to like 65 years maybe.
probably 70 to hit that same.
There you go. Yeah, gets us under that $2,000. So if they're like holding strong and fast because no, I need my 5%, fine, we'll give you 5%, but we need a 70-year amortization to make this make sense. And if they're getting what they want their purchase price, they want their 5% interest rate. Okay, give you your terms, but my terms, in order to make this work for me, if we want this deal to go through, then I'm going to need a 70-year amortization to make this make sense because I have to cash flow, right?
Yeah. No. Oh, there was a problem. No way. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my 40, and I'm gonna change this back to my 4 because I just want to verify a couple things. So this changed a lot. If you just watched that, you probably didn't, but it changed by $30,000 roughly.
Went up by $30,000.
Yeah. So because of that, I feel like I can sell them on this a little better, right? Now, this is the cool part is when you change these, right, it changes everything. So look at this, but this is what is the selling point. This is why numbers are so wonderful. This is why this type of calculator is so great. If you are doing this and setting this all up properly, then how cool. It's like, hey, by the end of 5 years, you're going to make an extra $30,000 off of, well, I guess not 30 in this case, it's 25, but an extra, $20,000 because you're simply willing to carry them out. Are you a fan of making money? Cool. Be the bank. Be the bank. Like, this is the perfect example of how you can be the bank and make good money off of us. And I'm not going to call you if the roof goes bad. I'm not calling you if there's, this is a way for you to be a landlord or have a rental without actually ever having to deal with the property ever again. Like, he was super jazzed about that. So this is what I showed him. He seemed pretty excited about it, or talked about it. I haven't seen it yet. But I actually am going to, when I call him, I'm going to be sending him this as well. I'm very transparent in most deals. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't, I'm kind of like, I'm almost coming from I'm just buying your house and I'm just some random Joe, but most of the time I come at it very like, this is a business and you're a business guy, so you're going to get this. These are our numbers and this is why. Like, we can play with it. I'll let him, tell me, well, maybe I want this. And it's like, okay, but I can't give you that. This is the most down payment I can give you. And that will be our hard number. And that way he can't negotiate that one. Purchase price, I would be open to hearing it, but at the same time, he would need to show me that commercial is going to make more. Okay, let's go back. I know we're taking way too much time.
One of the things, though, with commercial, which you could talk to him about, is with commercial, you deal with past performance and cap rate, and unless he has that, or he has somebody in there that is paying and they're dealing with cap rate, and you're buying an investment property with regards to commercial, then it really has no value. That it has to go by residential unless he wants to sell it cap rate, that's fine, but he has nobody in there. You're actually paying for the cash flow. So he can't really have both.
That's a really good point, Charlotte. Really good point.
And then with mine, what I did is I started at the payment and I just said, you know what, this is the most I can afford in order to make money based on past performance. So whatever it was making, because it's 3 doors in 2 houses, and it was like based on, and he had really low rents, and so I was like, well, based on what the rents are currently, I have to have the payments at this price in order to pay my bills based on what it's currently getting. I hope to be able to get more because you're so underpriced, but I'm not going to pay for future hope of what I'm going to get. I'm only going to pay for what it's been doing. And so I just started at payment, and then basically I gave him what he wanted, just asking price, but I got 3% interest.
Nice.
And he initially wanted 3 years. I asked for 7, and then he ended up giving me 5.
Yeah.
So, but I just started out with payment because really that's what you're after.
Yeah.
Regardless of what all the other numbers look like, that's what you're after. But he can't have asked for both.
Right.
Like commercial and no history.
Yeah. Agreed. Like I said, if he can prove it to me somehow, right? Which there's no way. It's not a rental. It never has been a rental. He's not renting out multiple units. So how can it be a cap rate? Right. It's not going to happen. So I feel very confident asking that question. Okay, let's break down the rest of these numbers. So I said $2,000 earnest money. I said there's no additional earnest money. There's no loan. Seller financing. So we're going to put down $51,000. And then I subtracted $2,000 from the purchase price of $515 here. Okay.
So
that's how that.
Seller financing. Seller financing is 51,000. Is that supposed to be 510,000? The seller finance note.
Let's see. 510. No, because it's seller finance note. Let's see. My brain just went blip after hearing all those numbers. So 515. Probably.
Is the purchase price.
Yeah.
So that's purchase price at the bottom is 515, not 513.
I minus.
Yeah, they go under balance of cash.
Oh, my brain. Yes.
Yeah. Total purchase price is 515.
Yeah. Yep. Good thing you're looking at it. We are a good team here. Okay, so this is 515. Okay. There we go. Now
I think we're still off because there's a seller financing note that we're having him carry of 465.
I'll subtract that. Yep.
So the balance of cash would be the difference.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is how you do it. You do 515 minus $51,000. So you're at 464. So purchase price total of lines, balance of purchase price and cash. So this is this one.
49,000. Because the earnest money is 2,000 equals 51.
464. Huh?
So balance of cash should be 49,000 because we've already given them 2,000 in earnest money.
But it's 464.
That's the seller finance note.
Yeah.
You've got balance of cash highlighted.
I'm so confused what you're saying. Sorry. What are you saying?
Sorry, I'll let you do your thing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not trying to confuse you. You're the agent.
No. My brain just went, what the?
So the seller finance note is the seller finance note is 464.
Yeah.
So you're in balance of.
Oh, that's what you're trying to say this whole time. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay, so let me pull that back. 464. Well, see, all of us, this is fine. You can just play around with this. It's totally fine.
That's 49,000.
Huh?
The balance of cash is 49,000. Plus the 2,000 equals the 51,000. In total cash. Yep.
Oh, no one. Okay, there we go.
Nope.
Oh, that
You're
was
right.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Blah, my brain. Okay, so that looks good.
Oh, one other thing, Maeli. Up here at the top, 2.1. There's two spots where it has the purchase price, which is weird. 2.1. 2.1. There's two spots where it has the purchase price. Yeah, we need to change it there as well.
You're like, oh goodness, let's not do that one. It has it on there. They changed that actually recently, but it's fine. It honestly helps you because I can't tell you how often, as all of us make mistakes, right? I'll get something that's like 515 million. It's like,
nope.
You see the right number up here, and you're like, oh, I know what they're trying to say, right? So, okay. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Sorry that was a little confusing, but there you go. Settlement, closing, there's really not a ton of stuff here. Possession, when you take possession, I always put upon recording. Like, that's just kind of my go-to. You can do like calendar days after, you can do hours, you can do all sorts of things to negotiate. You can do a buyback if that's necessary for them to like leave. We did that in the last property we just did. We did like a 2-week buyback or, so
lease back.
Lease back, yep. Split equity between buyers. There's all sorts of interesting things you can do. But special assessment, I just put obviously capital improvements approved by the homeowner association. So I'm going to put seller. I'm going to let Jackie back in. So whoever, I'm going to make them pay for anything that if there was any HOA or anything, there isn't in this case. HOA seller, if there was, there's not. And then let's go through and figure out who their agent is. This got a little weird because. Yeah, but we'll just and then we'll have to go find their agent information, but at least we'll have this. And then I'll go find their number. You can actually click on their information, and sometimes it'll tell you their office number. In this case, it's not giving you their office number, probably because it's kind of a weird brokerage. Usually, right, then it will kind of give everything, but right here is their brokerage. So we can go through and figure out all their stuff. Nicholas just joined. Well, welcome, my friend. We are diving right on in. We're just making some fun numbers. Let's go here. Let's copy this guy.
Mitch, do you know, like, on the contract for deed, when you look at, like, taxes and the interest that you pay on the mortgage that you would normally have, is there anything different about that since you don't actually have the title in your name?
Yeah, so you're going to want to understand whether or not that's paid through the underlying mortgage. If they have the mortgage paid off and they own it free and clear, then that can be negotiated. What I would say is don't ever put the responsibility on the seller, because then you lose control. So
not taxes as in property taxes, but your own tax write-offs for the interest.
Yeah, so a contract for deed is a mortgage, and so no, I'm not an accountant. Reach out to your accountant for sure before this is not accounting advice, but contract for deed is a mortgage, and so you can take those deductions as if it's a mortgage. So for the seller, it kind of evens out, right? Because they're paying taxes, but they're also receiving revenue. So and they're getting their deductions, but they're also receiving revenue, which offset their deductions. So for the seller, it evens out. But for you as the end buyer of this property, yeah, it's a mortgage, it's a note. You can take deductions, as far as I'm aware. But confirm that with your CPA.
I know we do. Okay, so I filled this out, right? You saw kind of how I did that. Unfortunately, because it is kind of a weird brokerage, like I said, I don't have that information right this second. It's fine. I can add it later in an addendum. I know there will be another addendum, so right, I have to do a seller finance addendum anyway, so it's fine. I'll just leave that until I can figure out what their brokerage license number is. Until then, we'll just leave it. I put my information in, so that's all good to go. The rest here is pretty simple. So due diligence, it is, right? This property, we are going to do our own due diligence before we buy the property. So always put is, as far as I'm concerned, always. And then as far as appraisal condition, you get to put is not, because this is a seller finance deal. And if this was a cash deal, you can put is not, right? If this was a fix and flip or whatever, then you can put is not, because that's really attractive to the seller, because you don't have to wait on somebody saying, oh, this home is worth this. It's exactly worth what I tell you it's worth, which is fantastic. And then when it comes to financing condition, no financing required. Wow, that feels so good, right? Financing required, no. All those things are great. Additional earnest money will not be. Make sure you click on that. If there was, you want to hear.
Maeli, let's take a second and go back to section 8.2 just for a second.
Okay.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Keep scrolling.
No, it's 8.2.
Oh, 8.2. 8.1. I'm sorry. 8.1. Okay, so due diligence. Due diligence gives you the ability to back out. So if you'll notice, right to cancel or resolve. If buyer determines in buyer's sole discretion, so I'm looking at 8.1b. If buyer determines in buyer's sole discretion that the results of the due diligence are unacceptable, buyer may either, no later than the due diligence deadlines referenced in section 24b, cancel the REPC by providing written notice to the seller, whereupon the earnest money deposit shall be released to the buyer without the requirement of further written authorization from the seller. So all we have to do, we don't even need to get them to sign it. We just have to send them a letter that we sign saying, hey, we're canceling the contract. And notice that it says, for whatever reason, right? You had pickles in the fridge and I'm allergic to pickles, so, I'm out, right? Like any reason. I don't like your pink wallpaper. It's weird, right? I'm out. So, that really, you always want to have, there is no scenario where I ever mark is not conditioned upon due diligence. Due diligence gives you the ability to go in and really understand the investment that you are investing in. Remember, knowledge mitigates risk. So the more knowledge we have about the particular property, the less risky it is, right? So make sure that you always give yourself that due diligence. Now, Section 8.2, we don't need an appraisal. We're not basing this off of appraisal. We're basing it off of cash flow, right? And Section 8.3, financing, we don't need financing. It's seller finance. So, we can make a strong offer by saying it's not required on either of those. But due diligence is always required for me. And I would recommend that to anybody that's going out investing. You want that due diligence period to understand your investment.
100%. 100%. It has saved our Royal Tushies dozens and dozens and dozens of times. So I highly recommend that as well. I'd be very scared not to.
It saved my butt more times than deals than I've done.
Yeah, for sure. And, we always tell people go all out when it comes to inspections, right? Make sure you're getting meth, mold, radon, and you're making sure that you're doing a sewer scope. Like, as much as possible when you're buying a house, because there's so much that can go wrong that you can't see. So you might as well at least see the things that you can at least get tested, And then when you start ripping down walls or whatever, you're going to still find more things that you weren't aware of. But at least it mitigates as much risk as possible. Yes, it can be more expensive, but I promise it's way more expensive to not know. Perfect. Okay. Additional earnest money. We said no. Addenda. There are. So we got to keep the R there. It's not are not, because we are doing a what? Seller financing addendum. Okay. So we've got to make sure that that's the case. Anyway, keep going. So, and this is a disclosure of interest. We could essentially. No, I want to leave it like that. We're gonna leave it like that. Home warranty plan as is condition of the property. Home warranty plan. In our case, I don't think it's going to be helpful. Every time I've ever called a home, a home warranty person after we've already bought a property, they've done us zero good. So I don't really care. On our properties that we sell, we always we buy a home warranty plan for every single person that has ever bought one of our properties, and that's just to really protect us. That way they can get help if they need it. But I don't know, I just feel like it's been more of a hassle than to just replace whatever it was.
Yeah, and it shows positive intent.
Yes, for sure. And maybe,
which
really
judges like.
And obviously we want to do as much as we possibly can to make sure that whoever is buying our properties feels very safe and feels like we've done anything and everything we possibly can.
Yeah.
So,
and what I mean by judges like is if you ever got into a lawsuit over a property you sold for whatever reason, a warranty type issue, like the plumbing exploded, be like, look, we didn't, we had nothing but positive intent here. Look, we even paid for a warranty for them, right? And that looks really good to a judge, so it increases our chances of winning any type of dispute simply by doing that. Which I mean, it's not just about that. Obviously, it's a protect your butt kind of thing, but we really do have positive intent. We want it to be a good experience for our buyers, and so buying them a home warranty, shows them good faith as well.
I'm just kind of burning through these because, as you can see, there's not really much. It's just disclosing a bunch of information, right? So if I wanted to show you a couple of things, I mean, it's very specific. It's telling you what you can and cannot do with your property while it's under contract. It's giving you full details of how you're going to leave the property, but when you leave, when you are giving the keys away, it's got to be sweep clean is what they call it, right? You can't leave a bunch of stuff behind. You can't, unless it's in the contract. Like, there's a lot of, you can't do short-term leasing, you can't do long-term, you can't do property there's no changes, right? Like, no changes.
Nope.
So we'll just keep going.
Let me hit section 19 real quick. Is that okay?
Okay. Yep.
Because we brought up the idea of, hey, if this ends up being a deal that maybe we don't want to do, but it's still potentially a good deal for somebody, we could wholesale it, right? Now, section 19 says that we cannot assign the contract without written consent of the seller. Right, which means I can't put this under contract and be like, just kidding, I'm not going to buy it, but Charlotte wants it. I'll just write Charlotte, I'll just kind of have a contract with Charlotte. She'll pay me 10 grand for the contract, and I'll just, pass it along to her. I can't do that without written consent of the seller. Now, I will say, and by the way, writing, I know a lot of people out there teach, just write and or assigns, right? Notice that the Utah REPC specifically calls that out and says, furthermore, the inclusion of and or assigns or similar language on the identifying buyer on the first page of the REPC shall constitute seller's written consent only to a permissible transfer, which in this section it says, I can only transfer this contract within entities that I own. So my personal, myself, or my LLC. That's a permissible transfer that I don't need the seller's permission on. And or assigns does not change my ability to do that, right? So ignore that advice if you've gotten that advice from gurus. But I will say this. A lot of times sellers are just open to it. You can just call them and be like, hey, we came up with some stuff in due diligence. Turns out this isn't a deal for us. We can cancel it. But I do have a friend, Charlotte, that is willing to buy this property. Would you be cool if I just assign the contract to her? She's cool with the terms that you've already agreed on, and she'll go ahead and close on it on our closing date. Usually they're like, yeah, cool, absolutely, we'll sign it, right? You write an addendum that says buyer shall be Charlotte Rohde, and he signs it, I sign it after Charlotte's paid me for the wholesale, and it's done. But there are ways around that, right? So one of those ways is it says that I can put it in entities that I own. Well, I can create a trust that's in my name, and without the seller's consent, I can transfer this contract from my personal name or my business name into that trust because I own both, right? That's a permissible transfer. So, this REPC has nothing to do with the trust. The REPC is now owned by the trust, but I can sell the trust to Charlotte or to someone else, right? And in that case, it becomes, that she now owns the trust and everything that the trust owns, which includes this contract. So there are ways around this. You just have to be mindful of those types of terms within the REPC.
100%. Okay, so normally I would do a 2-week due diligence period, right? That's plenty of time to get my inspector in there, throw my numbers, call the insurance company, verify that the people who I'm wanting to move into the home, where you have a place for them to live, and then that it meets all the state's requirements, and that's they can come in and check the property and verify that we have all the things that we need, or that it can have all the things we need. We can check that out. So I do think that 2 weeks would work on this property. However, in this case, I'm going to be gone from here to here, right? We're not. Both of us aren't going to be here. Now, have we closed deals?
That's why we don't have a call next week.
This is why we don't have a call next week. That's great. So normally I would say, we have assistants. We close deals all the time. We're out of town. Like this happens. We buy properties while we're St. George or California or wherever we're at. Because this is a business you can do from all over the world. You can, 100%. You do not need to be you can just have a notary show up wherever you are. Totally works.
Also, Maeli, sorry to interrupt. I have an exit strategy on this one I'd like to discuss later, but if we could do 21 days of due diligence, that would be awesome on this particular property.
That was where I was going with it, is that I'm going to be like, okay, actually, we're going to need a little bit longer. So I'm going to say probably the 8th. Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That seems pretty, I like a Friday too. It kind of gives us a little bit, there's a rule for financing that you actually don't have to get all of your financing in up to 4 days after.
4 business days.
4 business days after you close. So technically you get Saturday and Sunday and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to kind of figure out your financing if you needed it, which I don't think we would on this property, but nevertheless, it kind of gives us a little bit of push. If I'm selling the property, I'm like, no, to Fridays, because I want my monies now, and all of our investors want, our partners want their monies, but sometimes it just lands like that, and there's nothing we can do about it. So anyway, that's what I would suggest there. Financing and appraisal deadline, NA, right? Because there is none. Settlement deadline, and obviously that's very wrong. So typically what we'll do is we'll do it just right after due diligence, because we're not we're not looking to do financing appraisal and all that fun stuff. Like, we don't have to worry about it. So we essentially can be like, oh, well, we wanted till the 8th, so let's just close on Monday the 11th. Right? So makes sense to everybody? Because that was due diligence. Oh, I flip-flopped those in my head. Sorry about that. But that's fine. I think those are good numbers. We'll leave it at that. So 4 business days from this date, not from the due diligence date. I don't know. I need obviously sleep tonight. Bitch, where are your messages? Okay. Let's see. Offer in time for acceptance. So this is pretty stationary or standard. Excuse me. You actually need it to be 5 p.m. I have no idea why I said 6 just now. You have to have it, and why it needs to be 5 is because nothing's open past 5 legally. That they won't hold up in court. So if you respond to something anytime in the real estate world, and at least all of Utah, I don't know about other states, but I know they're very sticklers about this. If you're responding at 5:15 and you're saying, no, I don't want this property any longer, guess what? You're paying your earnest money. Like, that's you're forfeiting that if you respond after that time period, because they're saying that all offices are closed. So you want to make that at 5 o'clock so that they can't, accept that or change their mind. And if they do, then, well, that's their problem, right? So then you're going to sign it, and bada bing, bada boom. In this case, I have to email it to myself so I can sign it, and it's kind of a process. So I'm not going to do that right this second and show you that. But that's pretty much the case. It sends it to them digitally, which is nice. And then, I can just email the form. They sign it here, right? And if there's 2 signatures, they'll both sign it. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done. Okay, so that's kind of how we did that. Do you have any questions on this? Next, I'd obviously have to create the second form, which we're way, we're past time here. I would need to add a form, and that form is the seller finance addendum. So we would need to add that, and the finance, let's see if we can do it. Let's see if it'll do this. I'm not the one that normally does this anymore. I have not, and I'm not lying, have not wrote up a contract in 4 years. So that is just so you know.
She has an assistant to do it.
I have an assistant that does it. TC, yes, I love you. Thank you very much.
Just so you know, Maeli, so you can go back and change it later. Your acceptance deadline was February of 2022.
I'm not getting the contract. Okay. So I wasn't even playing. I already wrote the contract, and you think I'm going to put this live on air? Already send it over. That's funny. I don't want somebody stealing this project up from under me. That's crazy. So I'm not even using this Repsy, but nevertheless, she's already created it. She's already sent it off. So, but I was going to try and find the addendum. Well, let's see if I can just type it in. Seller. Oops. Bam, there it is. I wonder what the difference is. I actually don't know. My assistant would though. Dude, having a good TC is everything. And honestly, I've gone through 4, and this chick, right? Oh my gosh. Jen, you are a lifesaver if you're ever watching this, because she runs circles around me with the contracts. See, she's just been doing this for so long that I just believe, trust her wholeheartedly, and I can just look, glance at it and be like, yes, and then sign. It takes 5 seconds for me to sign, which is so nice. So somebody actually on my last call, not our Zoom call, but on our women's group call, the Utah Women's Real Estate Association, they were asking me, I get so caught up in the contracts, I'm so terrified that I'm going to make a mistake, I'm so scared, all those things. My advice to you is aces in their places. Mitch and I talked about this on the podcast today. If you there's certain things that are going to debilitate you. For me, it's contracts. I am, as you can see, I'm like, what am I doing? This is not my realm of expertise. I definitely don't want to spend all day sitting on the computer. That is not Maeli's jam. If I had to sit at the computer, and I did for a while to get started, because who else was going to do it? I didn't have money to pay somebody, right? So I had to do all the work, which was good because they taught me what I was looking for and how to find the things that aren't right, and how to teach my TC, how to teach them how to do things and give them advice on what I needed. And how, because most people don't know how to do seller financing, right? Most TCs, most brokerages don't even let you do that. And so that's really important to recognize, to know how to do that. But as most things in real estate, you aren't going to have to do the work. You're not going to have to do the work. We focus on 4 things. I'll preach it like it's, gosh, we're a broken record. I know that. But honestly, I would be wasting so much time if this is what I was doing all day long. Writing contracts, I'm supposed to be writing like 6 contracts a day. Those are our numbers to make it to hit our quota. I can't write 6 contracts a day and be negotiating and do all the running our show and running our fix and flips, and like there's no way I could do, and be a mom and a wife, right? So no, and be an agent and run the brokerage. So it's absolutely important to know the things that you're really good at. If you're really good at paperwork and this takes you like 10 seconds, you're like, oh, I need to do this part. Like, this makes me happy. Go for it. Do you, boo, right? Do you. But if this stuff stresses you out, great news. You don't have to do it. You need to know how to do it, but you don't actually have to do this. Again, for the first, 4 months, I wrote up probably 100 and something contracts. And then from then on, I've never written up another contract. It's just not my jam. It's just not my thing. So this is the seller financing addendum. Very simple. Back to, the forms. If you typed into Google real estate, right, and popped up addendum, bam, it would show up in your life, which is fantastic. You fill it out, right, handwrite it, and then send it over to them. If you're going to email it to them, they won't be able to digitally sign it. So know that that's a thing. If you're handwriting it, but that's okay. They can print it out and then they can sign it and then, scan it back to you. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to be formal and be like all digital and pretty. It doesn't, I promise, especially when it's unique financing like this. It's like, oh, this is kind of fun, right? It's very different. Also I wanted to, Charlotte had a question like, why would you be offering so much when there's not a ton there? I also want to get paid as an agent. If I'm putting all this time and effort into it, I want to get paid. And it shows that there's a 2.5% agent, fee. Perfect. Thank you. I'll take that too, right? And I do know that after doing all the math, that number still works. Now, if it didn't, I would remove my agent fee and be like, you know what, never mind. Like, I'll just make that a part of the offer, essentially. And I still can't. I haven't removed that as an option for me. But if you're an agent, why wouldn't you be including your fee in that, right? I mean, that's part of our job. So anyway, he already agreed to it. It's already on the MLS as that. I might as well see if I can get it. I might not be able to. So that's part of negotiation. There's always, I can always come down in price if I have to, if I really want this deal, which I think I do. It's pretty great. But it's super simple. As you can see, it's just a 1-pager. It's like a 1.5 pager. And then it's done. So the addendum's super easy to fill out. There's nothing like, oh, make sure nope. It's all super, super simple. There are a few other seller finance addendums that I liked that an attorney has written up that I don't have actually on me. I could get them to you, but they're really cool because you can do fun things like, as an agent, you can be like, oh, well, maybe I can't get paid up front, but I could be paid over time. So every time the buyer is making a payment, I get a chunk of that change, right? I get X amount every single month. Or you can negotiate it where at the back end on the balloon, you get an X amount of payment. Or there's all sorts of things you can negotiate. This doesn't allow you to do that unless you're going to do it in another addendum. Which is fine. You totally could if you have, clever things that you want to chit chat about. But it's pretty this tells you how much you're going to be. Well, do you want to go through it, babe, or do we out of time?
We're out of time. We got 1 minute left.
Yeah, I thought
so. We may have to do this on another day. Just part 2, right?
Yeah, but really, just to quickly, all you're going to do is everything that we put in here, right? We figured out our purchase price, our down payment, the loan amount, right? The interest rate, the term, the payment per month, the balloon, and then when our first payment is. You see how I snuck in an extra month? Yeah.
Love
and
it.
you can do that. Like you can go, actually, I don't want to pay you until December.
Yeah, give you a chance to get tenants in there.
Yeah, it's going to take me X amount of time to get tenants in there, so I'm going to need you to carry the note. I do that when I know they own the house outright. And so we've definitely done that. We've gotten like 6 months for free, which is great. But it doesn't work great if they have an underlying mortgage because they're so responsible for their mortgage payment. But you could say, hey, can I do like 2% interest for the first 4 months? I don't know. There's all sorts of clever things that you can do there. But back to, just briefly looking at it, right? You can see purchase price, you can see interest rate, Any payment not made within blank after days is subject to late charge, right, of what amount, and then, or you can do either or, you can do interest rate or a set amount. We usually do like $50. That's what we typically do. And then amount in default shall bear interest at rate of, right? So if we're not paying it, what's the interest rate in which that's going to keep accruing? Taxes, pretty simple payment. There's the payment. Split, due and sell. Oh, here's your due on sell clause. Real quick, let's just touch on that. So this is something that's going to constantly come up when you ask, if you bring up, oh, can I take over your mortgage? This is something that's going to 100% come up all the time, and that's because people are terrified that the note is going to be called due. Well, if the note gets called due, which is what this is talking about, then you have multiple exit strategies, okay? The first one is you can what? Sell it. If they call the note due, you can sell the property. You don't have to keep the property. You don't have to give them $515 cash or whatever they owed. You don't have to do that. So keep that in mind. You can actually just turn around and sell the property, which is why you don't want to overspend on the property either, right? You don't want to thought because they're down or 51, we obviously are well under what even Zillow said that it was worth. So I think there, quick, to rapid fire sell it, or we can just refinance it. We don't have to keep it with that bank that is saying, oh, we're gonna make sure that they're not gonna do that. And these banks are in the business of, they don't like to take properties away from people. That's just not their, their business model is not that. Their business model is receiving money. That's what they want. Pay me. As long as you're making payments on time every single month, we haven't had a problem. You want to say anything about that, Viv? Yeah,
no, I think you nailed it.
So pretty simple there. I wouldn't be so terrified of that. I bring it up, right? Bring it up first in sales always. If that's going to be a problem or people are worried about that, bring it up first so that they feel good about that. Yeah. And then right to cancel, due diligence, yes, title insurance, bada bing, bada boom. Super, super simple. Doesn't have enough information as far as I'm concerned. We would be putting together a second addendum that just spells out everything very clearly, because this is kind of vague as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a big fan of just this, seller finance addendum. I would want to spell out everything, right, very clearly in another addendum that just says, hey, and it's just a blank addendum is what it is. Number 2 will be just a blank addendum that I get to personally fill out, and it is, very specific. Like, this is your down payment, this is your interest rate, this is, our monthly payment. We're going to be using escrow specialists to handle the money, all the things, right? So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. Let's open it up for questions. Yay! We're done. See in the chat what we got.
Maeli,
Yes.
what property management company do you like in Layton?
Vision Real Estate is who we use. I mean, 4.5 out of 5 stars. So they're contractors are good until they're not, right? And sometimes they perform well and sometimes they don't. I'm talking in general, right? So you may have to change property managers, part of the way through your career, maybe multiple times throughout your career, and that's okay. That's part of it, right? It's always your business is a living, breathing thing. Contractors are good until they're not. So when they're not good anymore, change them.
Yeah. There is what class is it where it actually teaches you all the questions to ask when you are vetting a property management company. That's super helpful. There's also one to vet your contractors and things like that. Those are long classes. They're 6 hours long, and so there's a lot of information that goes into it from seasoned people that are in the industry, you know what I mean? That have hundreds, actually thousands of rentals. So it's probably better to learn from those individuals than us. But I would say from our experience, yes, Vision has been decent. I would say they're pretty good. And then also my brokerage now has a property management arm. And so I don't personally run that division. Jen does, but I can put you in cahoots with her, and they've been fantastic in Salt Lake. I don't know if they serve Davis County and Trinity though.
And is that where you would double check your rent costs? Like you looked on Zillow, but you said don't trust it.
Yep. Always dig in further, right? That's just like a blanket, like, oh, let's just, to see if it's even worth me submitting an offer, right? So I'm just going to do very broad stroke numbers, very cowboy math, if you will. And then once he's, seen my offer, now we're like, okay, let's have a conversation about this, right? Like, let's talk about this. And then once he says yes, okay, now I'm going to go back to, Jen and be like, Jen, run these comps, find out what the most you could possibly rent this property for, and then what the least you could, where's the median there? Worst case scenario, I always like to do worst case scenario. What would we be looking at? She'd tell me a number, and then I can go back to the homeowner, Ray, and be like, hey, Ray, so after doing due diligence, this is what my property management company sent me. That looks nice, right? I'm not lying. I'm very transparent. I'm like, this is what I got. Can you show me something different? You know what I mean? And then if he can't, once again, you're kind of putting that ballpark in his, putting it in his court and be like, show me how I can cash flow on this, and it's a deal. I'm taking on all the liability. I'm taking on all the risk. I'm taking on all of the problems. You get money every single month. Show me how to take this off your hands. That's how I negotiate it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Guys, that's all we have for you this week. We're sorry we went over about 10 minutes, but thank you so much for your time. Just as a reminder, we will not be back next week, but we will be returning the following week, which is August 30th. We've got a guest speaker lined up for you, Jared Brenchley, who's going to be talking to us about wholesaling and that process. And then the following week, which will be the first week of September, we have Ryan Black lined up, who's going to talk to us about some of the processes around hard money. So we've got some awesome things lined up. No call next week, but we're back on the following week and every week after that. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Make sure that you go out and stay hungry, stay healthy, stay happy. Get out and do some real estate. We love you all. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.